Hello again, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café. I'm producer and volunteer Rick McNamer. Every Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m., your host, Ray Gary, famous radio announcer, puts together a panel of guests to discuss topics of interest in our community. Listeners can participate by texting questions or comments to 541-661-4098. Again, that's 541-661-4098. Now here's Ray to tell us about today's show.
Well, first I'm going to correct you. That's famous radio personality, not an announcer. An announcer just reads, copy, and announces things. Okay.
I'll get it right next week.
A personality has a personality.
Okay.
And before we go any further, I'd like to remind everybody that these shows are open to anybody. If you want to do a show about something, especially we would really like to find some Republicans or MAGA people that would like to come on and talk to us. But today we're not doing anything like that. We have two lovely guests here today. And I will allow them now to go around the table and introduce themselves and promote any merch they're selling or anything.
Jala, Susie Katrina Thompson-Upton, the founder of Northwest American Indian Coalition, and honored to be here today and not selling any merchandise at the moment. So.
And I'm Tabatha Rood. I have been on the show before. Thanks for having me again. And definitely not a MAGA person, but certainly in the middle. So radical centrist, you might say.
Wow. You're the closest we've ever had.
Well, yeah, great. I can also phone a friend or my father if we really need input from that side on this
Okay.
issue.
Awesome. Okay.
Before we get going, speaking of phone, you can't call us, but you can text us and join in the conversation. 541-661-4098. 541-661-4098. Operators are standing by.
Standing by.
Well, actually, it's sitting by, right? But it's...
So anyway, let's get into the main topic that we have discussed, and that Tabatha, feel free to go ahead and introduce all of that stuff that's going on up in Gold Beach.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on in Curry County, I definitely have seen a lot of travelers on the road today. So just want to shout out to how beautiful it is, and if you're enjoying the 101, please drive safe and don't cause any accidents at Secret Beach. There are other parking locations. But maybe today we've definitely got a call to action for some local folks on some issues of development happening in Gold Beach, and also just a little maybe history lesson on Native American culture in Curry County and why maybe when you're driving up and down the coast in our county, you don't see so much of that, and maybe some of the reasons why that's missing.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. This is a pretty significant month as well. I have some dates I'd like to go over. The Rogue Indian Wars in the mid-1850s were pretty devastating to the tribal people here. There was a lot of learning, shall you say, as westward expansion came to the west coast here, and so things were getting pretty brutal. During the mid-1850s, there was genocidal policies and practices along the west coast here. In the 1853, you may have heard of the Nantucket Massacre, which was one of the second largest massacre on United States soil. It was very devastating and very large, and it's right here in our neighborhood. And then as you move north a little bit, between Chetco and the Rogue Rivers, there was a lot of brutal conflicts and massacres that happened that resulted in the majority of the survivors, what little survivors were left, were then forced marched, forced removed, forced relocated to coast reservations, which later became Siletz and Grand Ronde. So the people of this area, the tribal people of this area, were forced removed to other areas, and that is why you don't see a large tribal presence here in Curry County. Moving forward a little while, the tribal people tried to, reestablish themselves and heal and grow from what they had went through. And then again in 1950s, August of 1954, we had the Termination Act, the Western Oregon Termination Act, which again terminated all of the tribes that had reestablished themselves. So found themselves again starting over. In that Termination Act, there was over 60 tribes that were terminated in the Western Oregon Termination Act, which essentially was more than any other state in the United States that felt that. And what we have now is 9 tribes that are federally recognized in Oregon. The majority of those are confederated tribes, meaning a lot of the tribes that survived are underneath of an umbrella of a larger federally recognized tribe. So they share different cultures, they share languages and whatnot, which makes things complicated in and of itself. But then having to understand that the majority of the people that are on these reservations, that were removed to these reservations, this is their homeland. Curry County is the homelands and will always be the ancestral homelands. But we have to fight for that participation because of these 2 major past policies that happened here. So
was it the federal government that just said these tribes don't exist, or?
Yeah, the Western Oregon Termination Act was a federal.
What was the justification for that?
Just because.
Just because.
In other words, no justification for that.
Little was needed back then.
Why did they feel they needed to do it? I mean, what?
I would say it was probably related to resources. You look at fisheries, timber,
Gold.
Gold, otters.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry, what year was that again?
That happened in the mid-1850s. A couple important dates would be June 9th of 1851. That's when Captain William Titchener landed his steamship, the Seagull, in Port Orford. It kind of began the colonial settlement of the tribal lands in this area. That was Fort Orford. And there's Seriadan State Park outside of the city of Port Orford that was used as a holding pen when the tribal people were being rounded up. We called them sweeps. They'd be held there for transportation on steamships up north or force marched on foot. And that was in 1851. And then 1853, of course, was Nantucket. There was several different massacres in between then. And just as a reference, the Coquel people, the Coquel Restoration Act didn't come again until 1989. So they just had their restoration celebration on June 28th. They were restored in 1989. And I like to point out that that's 1989, not 1989.
Right.
So these are just recent restorations that tribe and tribal people have had to fight for so long. And
and this is where history is very important. Now, a lot of there's a movement to try to erase a lot of the stuff that was bad. But I want to do. I might have misheard you. The Oregon Act that you were talking about. You said 1954, or that was 1854.
No, the Western Oregon Termination Act came in August of 1954.
1954.
Mm-hmm. Over 60 tribes, more than any other state in the United States.
Recent history.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Wow. And then, the marches, I know one of the more famous one, I am assuming, is the Trail of Tears. And you were talking about there were so many nationwide of those marches that I'm sure we've never even heard of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty devastating.
Taking people from their lands and putting them in, I would call, concentration camps almost, maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty ugly stuff.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah. Another important date.
Our Blessed Founding Fathers.
Yeah, Manifest Destiny. What a joke. Anyway, go ahead, Katrina.
Another important date for June, and since we're still almost just barely in June, is June 2nd, 1924, is the American Indian Citizenship Act. So my grandma was born in 1920. She was not born a United States citizen. That didn't come until 1924, and then still it took a couple years to actually enforce that. So that's another. June was full of all kinds of important historical dates.
Okay, so until 1924, the Native people were not considered citizens?
Correct. A lot of our veterans that fought in wars were not considered citizens.
And treated horribly and putting great sacrifice towards our country. Can't get much worse than that.
Yeah, so I think that, to the point of like the significance of this area to both the current federally recognized tribes in Oregon and just to the people that are still here in terms of understanding the context of what came before, there's a lot of work to do. And that's why Northwest American Indian Coalition, which Katrina runs, is such an important organization for educating people that are new here, have lived there their whole lives, and are interested in how we can heal together, because it is not only affecting the Indian people and Native people that were here before, but it's also affecting the current communities, because we continue to allow development and kind of neo-colonial exploitation to occur in Curry County, which is kind of the topic that we came to discuss today.
That's okay. We got many topics we can discuss today.
I mean, it's just another example of resource exploitation and really capitalizing on this beautiful area, but really not doing any service for the people that came before or currently live here. I'll just briefly mention it. We can get into the call of action later, but there's a lot of examples of large companies coming in or wealthy individuals coming in to buy up property in Gold Beach or in Curry County more generally, either to extract resources, hold it as an investment, anything really but invest in the local community. And so not only do we have like an absence of acknowledgement to tribal people in this area, but we have a real absence of tribal ownership in this area, which doesn't allow for people to really appreciate the culture, which we see in other areas. You take a trip through California and you can take almost like a cultural tour of the state and really understand like who came before, what resources were really utilized, and how California developed through kind of a tragic history, but has worked with tribes to bring back a lot of those really natural healing processes of their ecosystem, but also their culture. And so we're kind of missing out on this big opportunity also in Curry County to economically and socially repair our systems with working with Native American culture.
Yeah. And you touch on that, and that's correct. I read a couple of papers down in like mostly Humboldt County area. From what I've read, I should have probably written this down, but I didn't. But from what I've read recently, they've been giving lands back to some tribes down there. Or now maybe there was some money involved. That one, I don't know. But they were getting some lands back. That's not happening in Oregon much.
Not so much.
I don't understand the difference there. That's kind of weird.
Well, I think Oregon is behind the curve on that just a little bit, because it's also happening in Washington. It's happening more all around Oregon than it is in Oregon as a state. And that goes back to the foundings of Oregon were actually much more racist than any of the other Western states. There was, Black people in Portland. Black people weren't even allowed in Oregon for, I can't recall the date now, but it continues to be an issue for people of color, anyone who's really diverse, to live in this state.
Boy, that's a big thing. That's ignorant of me. That I didn't know. We talked earlier about all of our ignorance that we don't know, and I did not know that about Oregon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Have a look at the Oregon State Seal.
Deep roots in the KKK.
Well, let's
I wonder if the
more
fact that
shows on that, but go ahead.
more people don't know about this or about Oregon at all is because there was never many John Wayne movies made here or anything like that.
Well,
we all know what happened in Texas and California and whatever because of the movies, but
yeah.
Oh, there's Native people here.
Yeah, and that's the reality, is that Native American people were all over America. And so there has been a land back movement. Because it's, maybe the morally correct thing to do is to give something back to these people that have been robbed of their lands. But also when you're thinking about like social issues, a lot of reservation lands are some of the most economically depressed areas in the country. And so when you are Not only talking about having land back for a healing purpose or some place to hold your ceremonies, you're also talking about a resource that's actually viable to use for the sustainability of your population and your people. Most of the lands that were given to tribes, even after some of them were given reservations, and then they said, oh, wait a second, we're going to give you an even worse land base because there's actually some minerals underground here, or you could actually survive off of this land. So we're going to move you to an area even worse than the first one we gave you. And that's too often what has been the case. But there's not a huge fund for land back to tribes. So it really takes individuals who have maybe benefited from the current economic system and exploitation for the last 200 years to be giving back, and foundations that are working towards this.
Yeah. I think a big example of that, if I had my history correct, were the Black Hills in South Dakota, where what is it, what am I thinking of? Mount Rushmore? Yeah. Not a fan either. But, well, really, because that was sacred land, and I thought that was at one time given to the whatever tribes were in that area or tribe, and then the gold was discovered. Oh, no, we're going to just yank that rug right out from under you, and now we want it back.
Yeah.
I mean, how? It's not even I can't even think of a word. It's just terrible.
One of the tribes that live in the Everglades, if I'm not mistaken, didn't come from that kind of an area at all. They lived like in the mountains or something, and then they were put in a swamp.
Oh, many.
I don't. There's two tribes there, right? The Seminoles and something else.
Many tribes were removed from their areas. The majority of tribes throughout the 1800s were removed from their homelands, from their areas, and put on reservations. And your homelands, that land is in your DNA, and you'll always feel that calling back to your homelands, and ties into the historical trauma and the reason why tribal people have some of the highest suicide rates is that scar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a negative of California, in my opinion, is all the missions that were put up along mostly along the coast, and basically built with enslaved Native American labor.
Well, our history is just rife with this. I mean, in America domestically, but also internationally.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with Naomi Klein's shock doctrine, but I've been rereading that lately because it's very similar to what is happening here again to our own people. But removing someone's history is one of the most demoralizing and dehumanizing things that you can do.
Right.
And it is all in the kind of guise to rewrite you as a person.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of best way to do it, is remove your history. And it really removes your sense of identity. It makes you question your own worth versus having your community and your knowing what is your history.
Yeah.
And removing your language and removing you from your lands, from your homelands.
Ooh, and that's a hard one too. Yeah, placing the children in schools and taking their language and their life basically
your
away
identity,
from them.
Right?
Thank you.
You're taking your identity away.
Their culture, and then replacing it with, and a lot of that was religion based, and pretty ugly treatment overall.
And I think you still see that in Curry County, where people who are Native American don't necessarily want to identify as Native American because it has been suppressed for so long, and it was such a bad, potentially had such bad repercussions for people that did identify as Native Americans for a long time. I still see that in Curry County, worse than other places, because there are a lot of organizations working to heal communities through Native American land back, and also respecting that culture, acknowledging that culture, because it really was more effective as an ecological tool for the landscape, an appropriate ecological tool, and for the people that are still here. I think it's interesting a lot. The artifacts that do exist and are highlighted in this area refer to Native American people as if they were here, and they are still here. They are still alive, and it was almost like we have this narrative that they were exterminated, and that's very much far from the truth.
Wow. Now this again, a little aspect of that's right down my way in California in the Smith River area right now. The oh gosh, where the big ship is, they're doing a lot of reconstruction there. Now that's Tolowa land, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, what they're doing is now they're trying to clean the whole area up, and they're going to make it into a RV park themselves. But there's a gentleman there from the tribe, I believe, because I have friends that live in there, that is always on job site, watching every little backhoe and bulldozer, and to making sure if there are any artifacts that might be dug up, he's there to try to protect it and let them know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Which I would call that a little bit of a positive. I don't know how much good he can do watching all the heavy equipment moving stuff around, but it's a thought that maybe.
Yeah, it's a good step.
Do you know about that?
Yeah, it's a step. It's a step in the right direction to have cultural monitors on site.
Great.
For any development, and that's a key point about the history of this area, and not letting what happened define who we are. We're beautiful artists and beautiful creators, and healing is really important right now, and that was the reason for starting our nonprofit Northwest American Indian Coalition, was to begin doing some of that healing work in the county at a tribal, with the tribal members, bringing the people back together, bringing the people back to the homeland, and doing a lot of that healing work.
And oftentimes in California, they have a requirement, and especially with a federally recognized tribe, which the Tolowa are, they can require a cultural monitor to be on site to watch out for those things. Versus just across the border up in Gold Beach, there's new developments going in today where they're pulling up artifacts with almost no requirement to notify any tribe or local people, or certainly don't have anyone on site ahead of the equipment monitoring for these things.
What would it take for it's probably a hard step. No, it blows my mind.
This is all hard questions.
Well, what would it take to say, hey, we need our tribal people represented here for what you're doing to our lands?
Well, Curry County is very difficult in that situation because there's not a federally recognized tribe headquartered here, and there's 4 or 5 different federally recognized tribes with overlapping jurisdiction, overlapping territories, and it just gets very muddy, very gray, very difficult, very challenging for tribal people to navigate, let alone people that are trying to build a new house. They're not going to understand or know how to navigate that. It's very challenging, and it is a direct result. It's a great example of ongoing harm of the removal that happened.
We have made a few recommendations at the state level. We've talked to several representatives about Oregon state level statutes that would require, private land developments to at least consider cultural resources, to even think about it. Because at the state level, we're missing a lot of policy that would even suggest on private land to have such a thing. And then locally, I think we lack enforcement in Curry County in so many different avenues. We could certainly use someone at the county who is aware of
an advocate,
tribal
tribal historian
or
something.
They have a tribal historic preservation officer is often what it's called, a TIPO. And that could be someone that worked at the county to at least be monitoring where we know there's a high probability or known cultural resources, to be notifying and working with private landowners that otherwise would have no idea because they're new to this area, or, having them at least consult with local Native people. So if there are artifacts or resources found, there's some remediation done and mitigation done, and those artifacts end up with the people that they belong to.
Gosh, we do have a text, and thank you for the text. And again, our text line is 541-661-4098. And it says, "Thank you, Katrina and Tabatha, for sharing this vital Native American history. So many of us haven't heard this history," raising my hand. "Our history classes carefully ignored these stories, unfortunately." Powerful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the ways that Northwest American Indian Coalition, we have such a daunting task in this county.
It sounds like it.
Trying to bring, there's one side trying to bring tribal cultures back together in their homelands, and then also educating people. Even if you grew up here, you didn't learn this history, and that is by design. We're seeing that happen in the public education system. And even growing up in an area where Native American people were a presence, in Southern California, for instance, they have casinos and have successful, thriving communities. We still weren't taught that history, and that is again to the point of removing people's identity, removing kind of a general consensus that we should do something different.
Yeah, I was hoping in the past. I can't think of words today. The past presidential group, the Deb Haaland from, I believe she was Cherokee, or I don't either. But I was hoping back that was it here again, Secretary of the Interior?
Yes.
I was thinking, man, thank heavens, now finally somebody's there that can help. It's too bad in hindsight that maybe she wasn't. Or she might have tried to get Oregon to step in line more.
I've heard that she's going to run for office in New Mexico, which is really exciting.
Well, that's I'll vote. Move to New Mexico and vote. No. Well, good. I really thought she was great. Respected her, and finally to get somebody in there of Native American, lineage to help do what's right, and it's just not happening now.
But too often, unfortunately, people get chosen for, say, they're like the Native American person to represent all tribes.
Yeah.
And there are so many tribes.
Right.
I know that there were issues, for instance, with offshore wind, with Deb Haaland being in that position. And it's almost like they get used as a pawn to represent tribal communities and advance the administration's agenda in those communities versus representing their identities first. Their administration comes before their identity.
Right.
It should be the opposite.
I guess once you step into that position, things can change.
Absolutely. But to your point, I think she did an amazing job. She was the first Native American woman ever to hold such a high position. And I think that really sets a precedent for the importance of having someone who actually is Native American in an administration to address some of these concerns. Because you just don't know all of the history.
And we still don't know a lot.
Well, it's hard to find it out.
Katrina, I wanted to ask you, when did you start the North American Indian Coalition? What year? How long has it been around?
I believe we filed in 21. Remember
real
right
recent.
right in the middle of the pandemic. It's a good time to start a nonprofit. We've been growing quite a bit in the last few years and have quite a few programs, and very proud to bring some of these healing programs forward.
She has an amazing website, nwaic.org.
Thank you.
Northwest
that's where I was going to go next. Okay.
You can check out our programs. We've been on here to talk about Healing of the Trail program, which is a youth curriculum, culture-based youth curriculum to get people back on the land. We've got some funding to do some fire restoration work, collecting native plants. We also have this campaign against an RV park in Gold Beach, and would really love for people to, that is nwaic.org/TEER. It's TEER. And that stands for Tututni Eco-Cultural Restoration.
Okay. And people can go on these sites and donate if they can, or donate time and
you can,
money. And
we'd be honored to have you join. There's options to donate online, and there's also options to keep updated on our progress with the TIER property. And then we also have a Caretakers Alliance, where if folks out there would like to join in some of the work that we're doing as a caretaker, we also have an advisory council. So there's lots of ways for folks to get involved and do the work alongside with us and help us heal some of the issues here in Curry.
Okay. And Tabatha, you mentioned the RV park in Gold Beach. I don't know how deep we can go into that, if we can, but I was reading the appeal online. What a lot of things struck me. It's proposed. Has it been passed that they can start construction?
Yes.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. And I'm looking at, being able to Google a few things. It's built right on the north bank of the road, right next to the river with, I would imagine, it open to pollution. Well, it had mentioned, the traffic noise, environmental damage, and they didn't consider any of that?
No. So what essentially what happened, we've been working on this property acquisition for about 2 years now, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
Potentially more. We've made several offers to the current landowners. We have made several outreaches to landowners along Wedderburn Loop. So it's actually just north of the Gold Beach,
The bridge
north
there?
of Gold Beach, across the bridge north on Wedderburn Loop. It is known as the old Sauce Brothers building, which was an international, that was a marine repair shop. There was also an international lumber yard. There is a lot of industrial debris kind of in the estuary right on the shoreline at this property. It is 5 acres. There's a giant warehouse. Basically all that is left of all of the industry that has been there is a 10,000 square foot white warehouse, and it sits, 5 acres right on the right in the Rogue Estuary.
Yeah.
None of the industrial steel has been remediated from the site. There, are posts and poles and even a hoist that remains from the International Lumber days, and it's essentially been for sale for the entire time. The last
many years,
5, 6, 7 years. And in our research, we have. There has never been an environmental assessment conducted on this site. And on top of that, this is also very close to, if not the center of, a culturally significant area, a very, very significant area.
To the tribes there.
Yes.
The native people.
Specifically to the Tututni people, which is why it's called the Tututni Estuary Eco-Cultural Restoration. So our dream for this property has been to have a place for tribal people of all tribes from Curry County to gather and celebrate together. We also have a dream to restore the estuary, the whole shoreline, removing a lot of the riprap and the steel out of the river so that people are able to access the river in a non-motorized fashion more easily, and really to prevent additional construction from happening in this culturally significant area.
And I'll think of a little similar story from where I came from in the Sacramento area, the old railroad yards. My point is, back in the day, they didn't care what they dumped in the ground or in the river. And the old Sacramento railroad yards that are now pretty much gone, it took them. What was that site? They used to call it a site. It was
Superfund site.
Thank you.
Yep.
It was a Superfund site. Where they had to go, they might still be doing cleanup because the railroad at the time dumped diesel oil, paint,
I'm sure.
name it. And that's just the confluence of the American and the Sacramento rivers. Now that's down there, but that's back to my point here at Gold Beach. You can only imagine there's a lot of junk in that area.
Absolutely.
And I'm surprised that nobody yet has tried to see if they could clean that up?
Well, they want $1.8 million for this 5-acre property with a derelict warehouse. If you've seen it recently, there are four giant panels missing from the side of the warehouse. It's an eyesore for people that live in Gold Beach, and it has a lot of potential. But the permit that was recently allowed from the planning director at Curry County was allowed an RV park to be sited on this location without any consultation with tribes, without any consultation with even the people in Gold Beach. There was just a notice to say that this permit for a land use has been authorized. If you go on to currycounty.gov, there is an appeal. We filed an appeal. They give you 10 days, which is a great amount of time to raise $500 to appeal such a decision and give them some justification as to why you are appealing the decision. But if you go online, there is, it's AD 2402, and they have their staff notes that apparently are conducted by a third-party consultant that goes through the Curry County zoning ordinance and gives whether they've met conditions of their current zoning. And so this property is zoned for commercial use. It is zoned for marine use. And somehow an RV park is meeting the definition of water-related activities, which I find very difficult.
Somebody waved the magic wand over it and declared that's going to be okay.
Well, and the problem is, it's
don't know.
it's not a. There are a lot of conditions in this permit, such as like they will have a riparian restoration plan at some point. They will have, a septic system that will be put in at some point, even though I'm well aware.
Point?
Yeah, at some point. I love when you see these permits happen where they're like, oh, this is just it's a temporary use permit. But we all know what happens once you have your foot in the door, you've got something set up, the inertia is in place, the ball keeps rolling, and all of those other promises that were made at the inception of the permit are not followed up, especially with a lack of planning department that we have throughout the county. So this was a huge blow to us, especially because we have been very vocal with the commissioners. We've been vocal with the neighbors. We have been fundraising for 2 years. We have some funding actually to come up with the design for the Intertribal Cultural Center. I mean, we've started to gather some momentum here because of the significance of the estuary and the cultural significance of this area. That it's a huge bludgeon. So Wednesday, July 16th at 1:00 in Gold Beach at the Annex, there is a public hearing. And I would highly encourage anyone who is interested in this and wants to see a better Curry County come and support us. There's also on this notice of public hearing a back page where you can submit a comment. It is free. We've submitted the $500 appeal fee. And so the public can make comments about this land use decision that would then be considered by the Land Use Commission.
It was July 16th. What was the time?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. at?
The Curry County Annex building. It's at 94235 Moore Street.
942.
And we'll link all of this and have all this information on that web address, nwaic.org/TEER. We'll put all of the details and updates there.
Okay, thank you. And isn't it funny, Oregon, all around the other parts of the United, I know for all around the other parts of the United States, Oregon's pretty well known for its beauty. Mm-hmm. It's, whether you're in by the ocean or in the mountains, and sounds like this spot along the road is a perfect spot to have people for tourism. Look at this beautiful spot that we've rehabbed and back to what it should be. But instead, I just don't see an RV park as natural beauty. Do you?
There's beauty and there's beauty. Well, people would like to see a Costco there.
It's funny, in the permit, actually, it references the RV park as bringing tourists and building the tourism industry, which I would argue Gold Beach has about 12 to 13 RV parks at present.
Yeah.
And they're not all full. And you're hiring as an RV park maybe 2 people, a maintenance person and a front desk person to check people in. And from there, there's not a lot of employment for local people. It's certainly not housing for anyone.
No.
Which we desperately need for the local economy. And in terms of tourism, what does Gold Beach have to offer for people who actually come here besides fishing, which this project, again, isn't addressing the health of our estuary for a robust fish population?
I would say that's a negative effect in an estuary.
Absolutely. And that's where the Coastal Zone Management Act comes into play. We've also been reaching out to the Department of the DLCD. I can't even think of the acronym right now, but
a lot of acronyms out there.
There are a lot of agencies and a lot of policies in place that should theoretically prevent this kind of development from happening in the floodplain. Mm-hmm. And yet we have kind of this wild, wild west autonomy in Curry County that continues to just override these issues and not make them known to the public or give anyone an opportunity to comment.
I think I read somewhere where you're trying to get a public hearing to happen?
So the hearing is scheduled. The county responded to our appeal with a hearing.
Did I miss something? Was that the July 16th?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, this happens to old people sometimes. Okay, thank you.
It's been a rapid timeline,
and then, you had the hodgepodge, got to throw stuff together at the last minute.
It is, yeah. But again, once they have their foot in the door to do this, it is almost an irreversible situation. An RV park being put in, you're going to have pads. They're going to regrade the whole property. They'll remove the warehouse, which at this point is an eyesore. So nobody's going to really fight that. But there isn't even anything in this permit that dictates they're going to have an environmental assessment. So to your point about all the crud that is in the railroad system, imagine a marine repair shop, what might be there, and an industrial lumber yard from the 1900s.
Right. Like they said, they didn't care what they threw in the water or the ground.
Yeah.
All for profit.
We don't know what's under the ground there.
Okay.
And most importantly, it does not honor any of the culture of Curry County. It is a missed opportunity economically and certainly socially to highlight even some of the industrial lumber era is a very important period for Curry County even existing today. Yeah. So I find it to be a very, in the scheme of all of the things that have coming out of the Board of Commissioners to make money in Curry County, this is a really strange permit to allow for a huge opportunity to be missed to heal socially and potentially have economic gain.
If you've already said so, I missed it. Who is doing this? Just some private individuals or?
Yes. These landowners, and I won't speak their name on public radio, but they own 5 or 6 properties in Curry County. They do not live locally to my knowledge. They are not interested in, we have made several attempts to either have them donate a portion of the property to the nonprofit or we've made an offer of over $1 million for this property, which they were not interested in even considering. And that's the issue with people. And I don't hate the rich. That's not what I'm trying to get at.
I know.
But there is a need, a huge need in Curry County where it's so beautiful to support the people that are here, that are trying to live here, not just allow foreign entities to come in and develop our resources without any
public
feedback to the local community.
Right. Pretty callous about the way this whole thing's been put down, I guess. I don't know. Well,
and
not
I haven't
put down,
talked
but
to a single
given the green light.
I haven't talked to a single person in Gold Beach or in Curry County that thinks this is a good idea. Not a single person. And it's really sad to me that we don't, there's a lot that we can't control at the federal level. I get it. But this is our local community.
Yeah.
What do we want to see? The people that have to see that every day.
Yeah.
And they have the permit? Is that what?
Yes, they already decided. So we appealed their
broken
decision.
Ground or anything?
No. But they have been working with engineers for the last 2 years. From what I understand, it is like an inside deal. The current owners, they have friends who are the ones who want the RV park. If you look at the listing of the property, it includes plans for an RV park in the purchase price. So that is that is the goal. That has been the goal for them to make money off of this property in the long term. But the real unfortunate part is, again, it's in the floodplain. It's on the Rogue River estuary. It is in a place that used to have eelgrass, coral reefs. I mean, there used to be a thriving, biodiverse ecosystem there. And you can still find a lot of the species, both freshwater and marine species that inhabit this area. But we don't know to what extent the remaining steel in the estuary is polluting the whole system.
Yeah.
And we could respect that and restore that to be functional not only for the species that should be living there, but also for people. Because if you've noticed, Gold Beach at the height of fishing, there are 300 boats in the mouth of the Rogue River. You could barely swim there if you tried. There are conflicts with surfers even at the mouth.
That interrupts your lifestyle.
Not at present, but yes,
right.
sometimes.
Okay.
But, the fact of the matter is people used to use non-motorized boats, and there's a lot of kayaking and rafting and non-motorized people that cannot use the Rogue River estuary due to the amount of traffic. And so to add to that, you're going to have 50 parking spaces and potentially all of those watercraft launching from this area. It's a safety hazard. It's an ecological disaster.
Yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. And if it was the other way around, where magically they did accept what you guys are proposing, you could return that estuary to what it really was, and it should be.
Yeah, we'd probably
Like,
lose some acreage, right? Like you'd lose a portion of the flat property that they've created because
Okay.
it should be more of a natural estuary.
Yeah.
But you'd have public access to a
Right.
beach
Right.
on the Rogue and be able to see, the beautiful bridge that is iconic of Gold Beach, but
It is.
at present there's really nowhere except for the north and south jetties, which aren't the most beautiful or
Yeah.
accessible places for
Right.
people to go to. And again, no history. There's nothing to be gained beyond the the relics of development.
Well, and unfortunately, this also I'm going to go into a place here, but it kind of smacks of if it goes through, there's just a few people that are going to benefit
Yes.
financially with this.
Yeah.
Not the community, really.
No.
Or the people that they're already there that live around that would love a little opening up of the natural
Absolutely.
estuary.
Yeah.
How beautiful it is. And to me, any place along this, Oregon and California, any place where a river comes and meets the ocean, that's a pretty special place,
It is.
I think.
Yeah.
And
Worth protecting.
very much so. Wow.
Especially when your economy in a place like Gold Beach functions largely off of the fisheries.
Yeah.
You would think that your number one priority is protecting your income source that already exists.
Right. Yeah, I do have a friend that goes there quite a lot every time her family comes up, not for fishing, but they do I don't know how big it is, but the jet boat that runs up the Rogue River. And
It's huge.
I mean, she has some pretty cool stories. This is just a little story, but it's pleasant about how there's one house that they'll stop at where the person's dog is still there, will come out and pick up the mail and just stuff like that. Local little wonderful stories. And I guess is there an overnight trip on the jet boat?
I
Or
don't
just-
think so.
Okay.
They do have, the jet boats have a long history here. A lot of people say that the jet boats were invented here. And I don't want to get into all the nuances of how the jet boats are able to route up the river and how far up they go. But I will say, I think they bring in 80,000 visitors a year.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of people, when you mention Gold Beach, that's the only thing that they know.
Right. The signs are way down in,
They're like, wow, I had this amazing experience on a jet boat going up the Rogue River. And for a while, I think personally, I hated the idea. I really, to be honest, did because of the fisheries impacts. But then there's this whole aspect of bringing people to this place, the opportunity. They do give a history lesson to some extent of people that were here beforehand. They talk about the Rogue River Indian Wars.
the people that conduct the jet boat
Yes.
tours. Yeah, that's what she said too.
And there is an incredible opportunity there to get people that would otherwise never make it up the Rogue River Canyon
Right.
into some of the most wild and scenic areas in the country. And so it's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Despite some of the negative effects, it's a huge opportunity and it brings people to Gold Beach, but then they come here and what's next? You bring a family of 4 to Gold Beach to take a jet boat ride.
Or school, with classroom.
Yeah. And then the after steps, you don't have somewhere to take them to go to an aquarium. You don't have somewhere to take them even to a movie theater in Gold Beach. You don't have
Museum.
there is a small museum at the jet boat. But in terms of family activities, this area is really lacking in that.
Okay.
Where this Intertribal Cultural Center would have a huge amount of possibility for eco-cultural education. And you could bring classrooms of students there to learn about the functions of an estuary and learn about the history of this life cycle of salmon. I mean, and there's a lot of examples of successful tourism facilities like this,
Right.
especially in the Northwest.
Yeah. Right. And salmon, what a big deal that is all along through here.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, attracting people. And when I say jet boats, I think that they're not just screaming up and down the river there. I think they take time to kind of go a little slow and easy sometimes. There's supposedly a large bald eagle population up along those are just magical to see in themselves.
They are.
They stop to look at animals if there's bears or something. And,
Okay, well
and they're good at pointing out bald eagles and that sort of
I
thing.
think that's wonderful.
But
Some
it's
rare
also
plants.
it's not just that. It's also
Well, I think, like
there's some
you said,
excitement.
That jet boat connotes, they're the people that doing racing and spinning around. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the world-class jet boat races happen on the Rogue River every 4 years.
I didn't know that. So there you go.
Yeah, and we have, once again, we just have this opportunity to have the people that come to this area learn not only how beautiful it is and how many resources and how untapped it is. I feel like we have like a giant for sale sign on Curry County when we should have like, hey, come learn about us
Welcome,
and help us, make this place even better by highlighting the people that came before us and how we can treat it better for the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where, NWAIC, your slogan is like for future generations. And that's really what we have to think about is like this RV park isn't going to be a pain in my butt only for the next 30 years. But every other generation after us is not going to know the significance of this area. They're not going to know what should be happening in that estuary unless we protect at least a small portion of it.
Yeah.
And this is the only undeveloped section like on the lower Rogue.
Yeah, and I just couldn't think of a more perfect section or an area where the tribal, you called it something, now I can't think of it.
Intertribal Cultural Center.
That would be located, in a peaceful setting with not a lot of machinery and traffic, but just a place to kind of reflect on what,
The people to come back home to the homelands and have a place to gather.
That's huge. That's huge, Katrina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see a lot of potential in it. And I think more broadly, we wanted to come on and talk about please show up for this hearing or donate or just know about the fact that this is happening because there's not a lot of, public involvement, which people get really frustrated with the federal government for not having federal, public involvement. But this is a local action that we should have a say in. And I think that a lot of people just would like to know that this is on the table. So thank you for listening to that. But I think more broadly, we have kind of this huge task to educate people on the cultural history of this area and figure out what is a better solution to heal from the past trauma and not inflict more going forward, which...
Couldn't say that any better, I don't think.
Right?
Man, I want to put that on a T-shirt.
I don't think we could assign two better people to the task if we tried.
No. I don't either. Well, God, it's so much to even think about. I guess at one time I was thinking that this wasn't really set in. It sounds like it's set in stone right now, and they're trying to ram it through as fast as they can.
They have approved it. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Curry County zoning ordinance, but I am getting up to speed very quickly because I'm assuming this hearing will have lawyers from the registered agent for these owners who have not been doing any of this permitting on their own. And I don't like to be in a place, we've been on this show a couple of times. We don't want to be in the place of stopping everything, stopping all work and all restoration. We'd rather be in a place of collaboration and planning together and coming up with a positive solution. So I don't like to just be here like, we're going to fight you on this forever. But we are at this point because there has been no public involvement. There has been a huge effort on our part to educate people and rally resources on this property to date. And so we are kind of at an impasse and a need for a public outcry against actions like this to continue to occur.
Well, and on the past programs that both of you have been on, that is your kind of your thing, I think, is trying to negotiate, navigate, give a little, take a little. But it sounds like, well, I hope that's how it works. I hope you are both successful in this, and because I think it's very important to keep that estuary as what it should be, not an RV park. I don't know. I just don't see that as I see that like putting up a dock or something.
RV parks there?
No.
Yeah.
No,
in Gold Beach?
Oh, in Gold Beach, absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
gosh, yes.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, your point about a Superfund site, one of the last ones that they permitted is also on a Superfund site. And to my knowledge, they're not even allowed to have a sewer system there because they would interrupt all of the contaminants that currently exist there. And I don't know to what extent they notify people staying there that they're staying on a Superfund site, right? But we should know that as local people.
The people staying there might want to know about it too. Now, but refresh me again here. That is a Superfund site where we're talking.
We don't know. So the RV park with the hearing on July 16th, we do not know because there's never been an environmental assessment conducted on the property.
And there it is. That should be one of the first things that they do, or it has been done and secretively put away. I don't know.
There's a small chance that has happened in past when the property is sold in the past, but I do not think so. I mean, we've asked the realtors, we've talked to a lot of people that would know. So I don't know exactly why that hasn't occurred, but I do know that if they do an assessment and they find contaminants, there is a significant impact to the sale price and potentially development regulations, rightly so.
All falling into
area.
place. But it's funny, that should be maybe number one thing that somebody could find out. Has there been a Superfund
an environmental study?
I'm having trouble. Thank you, Ray. That's why Ray's the host. An environmental study. That should be happening.
Well, I think that's something to bring up at the hearing, right? I think we can demand as public citizens that some kind of assessment be done to know that continuing to grade this area and further use of this embankment is not going to further damage the estuary.
Yeah. Boy, I can't see how it would. I mean, how it would not damage the estuary.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope that comes to that we find that out before it all goes, if there has been one or not. And for some reason, I'm thinking there probably hasn't been.
Yeah.
Or it was penciled out. I don't know.
So I'm trying to picture the area you're talking about. So this doesn't sound like a place that's going to be made more attractive by 50 RVs being parked.
No, it's if you know where the Coast Guard station in Gold Beach is, on the north end, it's the North Jetty. It's called Wedderburn. It's actually a separate incorporated community.
Oh, okay.
And so technically, like, the Port of Gold Beach is not involved in this deal because it's not in Gold Beach. It's technically in Wedderburn. And I don't know the whole history between the Wedderburn and Gold Beach delineations, but I know there is some history there with possibly two different mailboat companies. But I would just encourage you guys to join us July 16th if you're available. In person in Gold Beach, 1 p.m. at the Annex building. And if you don't have time to be there in person, totally understand. There is a comment form also online that you can send to the Planning Commission to have them consider your opinion in this matter.
Well,
I
do plan on being there, even though I'm a Californian. I don't have to say that out loud.
Careful.
And again, we'll have all the updates and information and links on our page, nwaic.org/tier, TEER.
I'm going to put that /tier. Yeah, thank you.
And we definitely appreciate all the support we can get from the community to join us.
Well, like I said, I certainly plan on making the drive. Maybe I'll take Ray with me.
Yes.
Up there.
We could take my car. It would be a real adventure because
I might not fit in your car.
Well, that's another thing, but it's just about at the limit of how far my electric car goes.
Okay. Hey, we're almost to the end here. I can't believe it, but I want to thank you guys again. This is just great info and stuff that we all should be aware of. What's going on right underneath our noses, and people trying to cover a lot of stuff up.
Well, thank you guys very much for allowing us a platform to talk to people about things that really matter to us and to all of us.
Matter to everybody.
County. Yeah.
Right.
We have a huge educational task, and we appreciate you guys listening and offering space.
Again, we thank you guys for being here.
That's the purpose of this program.
You bet.
Yeah. This is just exactly the type of thing that we envisioned having.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, thank you guys again. So, we're down to 30 seconds. Any last-minute super things you have on your mind that you want to let folks know?
Drive safely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks.
There is a lot of traffic out there. Right. All right. Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks to the listeners. Thanks to Texter. KCIW LP, 100.7 FM here in beautiful Brookings.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.